Okay, you should be able to see my screen now. Please let me know if you guys seen it.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right, really quick before we get started, we are at the end of the month um, or beginning of the next month. So I wanted to give you a quick summary of the activities that we've performed in the last months, which is actually quite extensive. Um, So just a quick summary, and Jordan, I'll post that in a couple of, later today in the report, but this is what our activity in May has been. Of course, as always, we continue going through our regular ongoing exercise of managing the features and technical standards. Regular meetings have been every week. So we haven't skipped one, which is great. We're making a lot of progress, and we had quite a bit of workshops this month. We had one, two, should move features around a little bit so they're all the same. One, two, three, four, five feature session, and one, two, three, four, five, six, seven standards workshops. So good progress. I think that we're switching to a better cadence. We'll probably be able to um, retain this velocity, maybe even increase it. Obviously, we're trying to be very conscientious of everyone's time and keep it no more than 1 hour workshops a week, although we are going to be able to spread that out among different groups within that same sort of hour. But a lot of contributions this month from Jordan and from Yuri. I wanted to thank you guys both for spending so much time on the URI and URI resolution. But we had everyone's involvement, and we did a lot of great job, great input for the wrap standard as well, which the entire council contributed to. So this was an amazing month. Any questions, concerns about the current velocity and the operations process for the technical standards for the months of May?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's been really cool to see this take place while we're, actively like building the product towards launch. And yeah, it's almost like we're flexing different muscles or different parts of our brain as an organization. So I think that yeah, like it's going to be really cool once we have, the spec actually finished to start then, working on maybe some additions or some revisions to it. And yeah, it's going to continue to be super useful.
Thank you, Jordan. I think one of the obvious challenges is to make sure that we have the right balance, not to overload the team that's obviously working right now very heavily towards the alpha release with this additional overhead of writing standards and specifications. I think that once the alpha release is out, we're probably going to be able to talk about maybe increasing the velocity and maybe doing two dedicated workshops a week. But we'll discuss this if that's not ideal and want to keep the velocity the way it is, that's fine. But if the goal at that point is to really just focus everyone's attention on finishing up the standards, or at least the first version of that, that would be something that we should be able to do after the alpha release is out. All right, so this is our quick update on the May. One thing that unfortunately didn't make it there, but it may be if we very close. We're also gonna, very close in getting our first standards accepted. So let's switch to that topic really quick. Let me just go back um, to my agenda. Before we go to the acceptance, sorry, let's just go through really quick through our scheduling. So. Um, we did a quick survey. Joe, thank you so much for sending that out. You can pull that up. I don't have that link close by, but Joe, you mentioned that uh, the consensus from that survey is that the majority of folks would prefer to do Wednesday, excuse me, Tuesday call. Is that what we said at 11 o'clock? This is the slot?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Yes, Tuesday was the most popular day by voting.
So I just want to confirm that maybe not starting next week, because obviously there's a too short of a distance between now. Well, exactly, we're doing features, so maybe starting next Tuesday, which is the 7th.
So I think starting next week we have alpha release planning in that time slot.
Oh, so that slot has already been taken. Joe, we missed
that
our opportunity, huh?
Yeah, second most popular was Wednesday.
And Thursday doesn't work, right, for everybody at that time. Okay. So what about Wednesday then, doing at 11? Would that work for everyone?
Yeah, there is one thing missing here. The DeFi wrapper saying so. Maybe we just need to make sure that it don't clashes with it on Wednesday.
The DeFi wrapper call is an hour prior.
Okay. Yeah, then it should be good to go.
So that's 11 a.m. Central Time, right?
Correct.
Correct.
11 Central.
Yeah, it works for me.
Can you mark it on the calendar just to see where it fits?
Yeah. Let's see. So for next
the same time slot, right? 12.
Same time slot.
p.m.
It's at certainly not 11. Oh, sorry. Was it at 11 or at noon? Joe.
It was 11 Central. Right after the Polywrap call.
Yeah, I think it was 11 Central, which would mean 6 here in Spain, right, Nestor? Or I'm wrong? Yeah, 11 a.m. on Wednesday. That's correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, that's the time we're proposing. So you're adding that, right, Eugene? So
Yeah, I will. I have this capability. Just wanted to confirm with everybody that Wednesday at 11 o'clock is what everyone is comfortable with doing.
I think once you add it, they'll be able to see better on their calendars if
Yeah.
it conflicts.
This is invitation. So let me copy this for Wednesday at 11. You can't copy. Come on. All right. How about we'll do it this way? For this event only, and I'll fix that later. Send. Can you guys take a look? Is that looks good for everyone? Jordan, is Wednesday at 11 o'clock works for you as well?
Yep. Yeah, works.
Okay. Well, let's agree on this for now, and then we'll switch things around, and then Fridays are gonna be our regular meetings for for the workshops. All right. All right. Next one is acceptance. Let's go through that. Okay. Just pull that up real quick. Here it is. So I spoke with Kevin, and we discussed the fact that probably based on discussion that we had previously, using the snapshot platform for very formalized um, acceptance voting is probably an overkill at this time. He suggested that we use the voting capability that can be embedded directly into the forum. So what I have done is I created a new forum article under the technical console standard acceptance with the standard header URI standards, and posted the URI standards version 1. Created a link for this, so obviously you can see it here. This is the sort of already a versioned post, and was hoping that, oops, what did I just do? No, that's not what I want. Accidentally clicked it and you can't unclick it. Great.
Well, guess it's rejected now.
No,
So
it's we can outvote you. It's okay.
I don't know what happened here. Apparently, you got to be super careful, guys, when you just move things around. You cannot undo your action. Maybe I can. That's not good. But either way, maybe you guys can go through the acceptance really quick, do a final review, and go through the acceptance. So let me pull that up. So this version is what is the latest version that was posted from HackMD from Yuri. I just removed all of the acceptance components. But let me pull this article up. Oh, let's go to forum. Here it is. Here's the workshop note. So as you can see here, we have the initial feedback that we collected in May on the 6th, and we incorporated all of this, or Yuri should say, incorporate all of this feedback. And then we also had a final feedback on the 20th, and we incorporated all of that feedback here as well. So I think unless there's any questions, I think we're ready for voting. Let me give you 5 minutes to vote, and then if everything was good, we'll change it to accepted.
Actually, well, two things. So I guess first one is, should we have the authority for file system be FS like it is now in the code base, or should we rename it to file like we said we were gonna do?
Yeah, I think we should rename it to file. So, yeah, since that doesn't affect the standard itself, it's just one of the examples. I don't think it should change much, but yeah, we can change that example really quickly. Does that sound good?
Yeah, to me.
Okay, yeah, I'm modifying it in GitHub right now. One sec.
I can do it in both places. Is this the reference that you were talking about right here?
Yep. So file would be
File.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And let me
yeah,
change that in the standard as well.
okay.
Or unless you're
Yeah,
already
and
doing this.
yeah, I was about to just commit it.
Okay, go ahead.
I was just wondering, for the HackMDs, I feel like we should have a clean breaking off point. So, maybe at the top of the HackMD we should just say this has been moved to GitHub, and then just link to the GitHub or something like that. Just so that way there's not the confusion of having things in two places.
Mm-hmm.
And my second point was last time, I think it was the last time, the technical council meeting. So we were talking about what to put in the standards in terms of whether standards should follow what's in the code base, or should the code base follow the standards, or some combination of the two. And there wasn't a consensus, so I just am just bringing this up to maybe discuss it now or at some
Yeah,
other time.
yeah. So I think that what we discussed was that this first round of standards that we create should be based on the code base. And then if there are changes we want to make, that can just be a revision of the standard. But we should be creating these based off of what has been working for us so far. So if anything, the code base should move ahead of the standards, and the standards should lag behind because it documents the things that are tried and true and have been working. Does that sound good?
Yeah, so I think, sorry, I was
Sorry.
just gonna say, so at any point, I think just from the process standpoint, at any point, anybody on the technical console should be able to recommend the revision that should be added to the board, and then that implies a next version of that particular standard. And then we can choose the version number, major, minor revision, and based on that, um, make an update. But go through the entire flow similarly to what we're going right now for standard. We'll go through the revisions as well. Is that what is that in line with what you're thinking as well?
Yeah, definitely having a clean process for making revisions. Yep, definitely.
So uh, to add a bit to that point, so the discussion that Yuri is talking about came from a discussion, I think it was with this particular standard, um, about if we should rename the wrap prefix to W3, given that currently the code base and the protocol work with W3 and not wrap. And therefore, if somebody like a developer tried to go through the standard, he would be confused because he would find that what's in the code does not correspond to what's in the standard.
Yeah, so
So
I just wanted to add quickly that we should be creating the standards based on this first release. So in the first release, we will have everything renamed. Yeah, but yeah.
right, right. I mean, I think that the point I'm trying to make is that I think that for this first standard, I mean, I think it's fine that we replicate what's tried and true, especially because we had nothing before and now we have something. But then with certain things, and after this first standard round, I don't know, like things are a bit grayer to me, because um, because there are some things that we may do in the code and then maybe they work, but they have been like spontaneously or empirically done, so they may not be the best thought out way of doing things, whereas in the standard, everything that goes into the standard has been passed through a collective thought and evaluation process. So it's I don't know if my point's getting across, but
Yeah, so I think that the cadence to keep in mind here is that basically the release cycle. So think of how the Ethereum clients work, right? There are multiple client implementations, and based on a very specific like network fork date, let's say, all of those clients are expected to be up to par with the major EIPs that are being put into that fork. And so like in the world of Polywrap, let's say we have multiple clients, and let's say that we're planning a version 2, and we've said in version 2 we really want to change the way URIs work entirely. So we've created a standard for that. We've gotten everyone's approval. We've even created some prototypes of what it looks like inside of, let's say, the JavaScript client, and just have that in like a dev branch or a dev build. And then when it comes to launch that version 2, we say, hey, version 2 will use this new URI standard. All clients need to be updated to incorporate the standard. So basically, the timeline is, revising a standard based on some, development that's been done, but not necessarily made to production yet. And if that makes it into a new standard, then the rest of the code bases that rely on that standard will need to be updated to comply. And then a release is made with those new changes. Yeah,
Yeah,
does that sound good?
yeah. With that, I agree because yeah, it makes perfect sense to me.
So
Okay, so just to try to summarize it from my point of view. So, like I said at the start, the discussion was whether code should follow standards or standards should follow code or some kind of combination of the two. And I think this is a combination of the two. So basically, we have something in the code base, and we're working towards a release. So let's say we released version 1 and we're working towards releasing version 2. The current code base is that of version 1 and it's changing maybe constantly. There's standards for version 1, and while that 1 to 2 release or sprint or whatever is happening, we're creating standards for version 2. So, sort of ahead of the time, but again, they are kind of reflected of what's already in version 1. So, they're not standards for version 3, for example. So it's kind of a combination, I guess. At least that's how I understood.
Yeah, I would say that it's definitely a combination, and it's a little confusing to talk about because we don't have good terminology that we've defined yet for like referencing these things. Because there's the kind of wrap protocol standard releases or whatever, but then there's also the Polywrap toolchain releases that are completely separate. So and then maybe there's a third party that builds on our standard and they have their own toolchain. So um, yeah, I think that we need a better like semantic graph of what this looks like, but it's definitely a combination. Yeah.
In any case, from what I understood, the jury said, from what I understood about what Jordan said, I think we're all in agreement and we're all saying the same with different words and names, but I think we are all in agreement still.
Yeah,
Yep,
I think
definitely.
now we are. Yeah. uh, maybe one small point, and this is just ironing it out, I guess. So, should then the standards that we're creating for version 2, while the release for version 2 is happening, or the sprint, should they be actual standards that we publish before version 2, or should they be like proposed standards, like proposals, and then we like merge them, let's say, into GitHub as standards when the release happens, or just before, or something like that?
Yeah, I feel like going back to the Ethereum example, like the standards for let's say the beacon chain were ironed out before all the clients like kind of implemented it. And when they were building those initial standards, they had some initial prototypes they had created. So I think it's going to be similar to us. Like it's going to be prototyping and developing, testing it out, making sure it works, creating a standard, and then rolling out the standard throughout the rest of the code bases that rely upon it.
Okay, yeah. Then my question was actually more nitpicky than I even realized. It's just a matter of when you put the final status as final. Is it a bit before the release, a bit after the release? But that doesn't really matter. Okay, it all sounds good to me.
Okay. And then from the process standpoint, we can certainly use branching since we're keeping all the standards in GitHub. We can use branching strategy to control versioning. I would say that the current standard, the one that's associated with the current release, or the ones that you know whatever we call it current standard, right, should be probably in main, just like we have it right now. But then for any additional versions, we can spin off a new branch and work in there. Is that how you're thinking about it as well?
Yeah, definitely. Yep. And we'll do the same with our, our products as well, like, the CLI or whatever. We'll have, basically the release builds for, major versions, and then we'll have patch, versions on top of that to make fixes. And then we'll be developing version 2 in a completely separate product launch branch. Yeah.
Okay. And then once
Okay.
obviously that branch goes live and those standards are now accepted and production ready, we can merge it back into main.
Yeah, I would also suggest that probably we can, every time we do a release, we can push tags with a number of the version, basically. Yeah, tags is
Mhm.
something like branch, but it's explicitly for releases in GitHub. So yeah, basically a tag 1.0, and yeah,
Okay.
every time a release is done.
Yeah, I think once we're ready to kick off like a new version of the like let's say URI standard version 2.0, I'll probably need a little bit of help to make sure that we've got the right branching strategy. So I'll have a conversation with you and make sure that we get from just purely operational standpoint, make sure that I got the right tags, I'll look assign and so on and so forth. But that's sounds like that's a pretty straightforward process at that point.
I have a new question, and probably can be out of place, but now I'm wondering, like, have you thought, like, how do we want, if you want to show like these standards when in the alpha release, like, if you want to, yeah, show something like, I don't know, now that we are talking about releases, that do we want to do, I don't know, V1, yeah, version one of the standards, or yeah, have you thought about it? I don't know, just curious here.
Yeah, so the current planning is that we're gonna release the first version of the toolchain by the end of June, and then after that is when we'll come out with basically like our version of the Polyrep white paper. You know, it'll be like here is the wrap standard or the Polyrep standard. Um, and so yeah, we'll come out with the first version of the standards after we launch the toolchain. And then going forward, it'll probably be a little different. It'll probably be okay. We've realized we want to make some big changes, so call this V2. We make V2 standards. We all agree on them. We launch that, and then we probably launch the toolchain after that, let's say, or something like that. So yeah, but for this first one, it's going to be opposite. We're going to launch the product and then launch the white paper after. Yeah.
Cool, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
All right, excellent. I think we can move on to the next agenda item.
Yeah, I have one thing, one
Yeah, go ahead.
feedback about the URI standard. Yeah, so if we are keeping this URI standard for the next release, then I think we should also rename FS to file.
Yep. Yeah. We already released. We already changed it to file.
Okay.
Let me just refresh that. Here it is. All right, so let's take a look at our acceptance.
Yeah. Eugene, should we start with a quick just question to see who's all kind of read through it first?
Yeah, it's a good
Okay.
question. Have you guys had a chance to review it?
Yeah, I I have so to vote is that on the forum?
Yeah, it should be right here.
Okay.
So let's maybe go ahead and do that now.
Oh wow, you click and it already votes and you don't have to confirm or nothing. This is kind of scary.
I know, right? But it looks like somebody fixed my misclick.
Yeah, I ended up editing the post and I created just a new poll and I deleted the old one, so it
So it's clean.
refreshed all the votes.
Okay, gotcha.
Controversial.
Oh, and I found that we can change the word. So if you click that so what, you can change it. Yeah.
Oh god.
Oh, you can click remove vote. So it is something you can do. So if you after you click a show vote, you can click remote vote. So that's good to know. So if you accidentally clicked on rejected, I think somebody might have. It's a function of then clicking on show results and then remove vote, and that's it. And then after everybody is done, I think I can click on close, and that finalizes this post. We'll check that out in a second. I think we got everybody, right? 7 votes. Anybody didn't vote yet?
Yeah, so is this just for the technical council member, or are we going to keep this open for public votes?
Yeah, so we had that discussion last time. I think what we agreed on, let me just make sure everybody is aligned to that, is that the technical council will, the permanent members of the technical council will be the ones that will be responsible for the vote in the standard. Once it's accepted, we can open it up to the DAO, which is what I'm going to do after the acceptance is completed, is open it up to the DAO for additional feedback and review and just viewership. Basically saying, hey, Polywrap members, DAO members, here's the standard that was accepted by technical council. We'll produce and finalize and accepted by technical council. Please review. Let us know if you have any additional insights, and those will be towards the next. We can consider those towards the next version. Is that the right? So I think that's what we discussed last time. If there's any concerns about that approach, let's discuss it now. Does anybody have any thoughts or any concerns about the just kind of having only technical council participate in the voting process? I think that's the key takeaways. But then sharing with the rest of the DAO more on the information only basis. And then whatever feedback we collect, we can process that towards the next version.
Just to make sure I understand, only technical, members from the technical council can vote here.
Yes. Well, basically, yeah.
Okay, then yes, I think that the people that it's like capable of having an opinion on this should be the ones to vote. But yeah, the information should be public. I agree. Also, I would I mean they should be that public that we should even discuss like the comments of the new standard in the forum, right? So yeah, I would say that we should keep the information public. But that's my thought.
Yep.
So how do we actually control that? So I think we're all here now, most likely, but the next meeting we might not be here. We might need to vote on something, and I don't think this is a restricted poll. So
Yeah, so I actually, right. So that's a good point. Probably restrict this post in the future to only technical council members and then open it up to public after the vote is complete is probably the better way of approach. Right now it's open to public, but nobody knows about this other than about this post other than people that individually went in here or looking at the technical council channel in Discord.
Yeah, and just throwing this out there, one other way we could do this is we could have like a non-transferable token or like an NFT or something that we just give everybody who's in the technical council, and then we could use Snapshot for the voting, and um, we would just have our own separate, Snapshot space for that. That's one way we could do it to where it would just restrict it to the people that are in the technical council.
honestly, I was gonna suggest the opposite because first off, this will work among us, but if there's anyone voting against or rejecting from like the, let's say, greater public or whoever's a user on the forum, then it's either a spammer, which I think it could be easily dealt with, or then we could move to something more restricted, or he's someone that legitimately disagrees with the standard, and maybe that would be a good point or a good point in time where we might consider not having just technical council members vote, but maybe the DAO, or I think that would be a great point to discuss the governance of this if there's a controversial vote or differing opinions.
Okay. Yeah, let me think about all of the input that you guys provided here. I think that what we're homing in on is potential two-step flow here, where once we open it up to the public, meaning the public DAO members still, um, we can potentially collect another vote or feedback in any significant way. But let's let me run through the flow end to end once and see what kind of responses we're going to get, and we can go from there. It doesn't have to be perfect the first trial out. But I think the key takeaways is that we do want to make sure that we have some level of security to ensure that the first round of voting on acceptance is done exclusively by technical council core permanent members, and then after that we can open it up to the world.
Honestly, I'd make sure that the first couple of votes or first couple of votings happen like unanimously. If they're not, that probably means that we haven't discussed this in detail.
I think this is anonymous vote here, right? I can't see.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's every yeah, he was saying it is unanimous, so everyone is in favor.
Yeah.
Oh, unanimous.
So if it's not unanimous, that probably means that we should have discussed it more, or maybe there's like a legitimate concern and it hasn't been voiced. So that'd be a good point where we should change our approach. Maybe if there's non-unanimous
So
voting.
I just wanted to bring up that this is, I mean, what I saw is that this is one of the problems from Ethereum, for example, when in the EAP processes when they decide to get merged things. And yeah, so basically, I just want to share like how it works. That basically it's not a yes or no step, but instead it's like a proposal. It's on draft and then in review, and then they have like a cooldown time, so the pre-approved EIPs get like final review, and then like they got merged. So I don't know, probably yeah. I mean, I'm sure that in future, Jude, that's a good point. That there will be confrontation regarding which solution to take. It happens, and I think this is one a good way, probably, because it allows time to draft it, give your review time, and we can discuss, and that can iterate probably. um it have its bad things, but yeah, probably something to keep in mind so we can improve on this,
Yeah.
as this is an interesting problem, to be honest.
The one thing that I would point out is that probably unlike Ethereum is that our technical console is still fairly small. And what you're describing, I think, works really well when you have very large technical console, a lot of contributors that don't necessarily communicate at the regular basis like we do. But the reality for us today is that we go very explicitly through collecting feedback, reviewing feedback with all the permanent technical council members. So most likely, by the time we get to the voting, all of the issues have been hashed out, and it's more of a formal step of saying, let's just capture that and finalize this. Because any feedback that hasn't been incorporated yet implies that we really hasn't gotten to the acceptance step yet. But I agree, Niraj, in the long term, once we don't necessarily have all the contributors, all the sort of permanent technical council members being able to get together on a regular basis on the weekly basis to go through feedback review, then we'll need to have a more sophisticated acceptance process that allows for cooldown periods and collection and multiple review processes. Do you agree with it? Do you think that's a right way of thinking about it?
See, I totally agree with you.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right.
Caesar, we do currently have a very similar process, I think, to the EIP standards. We do have like a proposed status, first feedback, final feedback, acceptance. So it's kind of similar, just less formal, I guess.
Okay. All right, I'm gonna update this and continue with the flow. Let me just do a quick time share. We have 15 minutes, and we wanted to do three more agenda items. So let's see if we have time. Let's jump on the rep standard rep protocol. That one is ready to do a final walkthrough and decide whether this is ready to review final feedback and decide whether this is ready for acceptance as well. It seems to me that it is. We've gone through multiple iterations. Excuse me, I picked up the wrong heckam. Here we go.
The GitHub version is now like the version that's going off of. So if you just want to open up the GitHub version, the link above. Yeah. Yeah,
That's the latest now? Okay, got it. So
yeah.
don't override this. So the question is at this point, a lot of content was incorporated in this at this point. The question for maybe we can do a quick walkthrough and make a decision whether this is ready for a final acceptance.
Sure. I could quickly walk through. And then I know that I think Nestor and Niraj also contributed to this last week as well. Is that correct? And so
Yes.
would you guys want to maybe walk through like the bottom half that you guys updated?
Sure. So if you scroll down a bit, Eugene, so the part that Niraj and I worked together on our last meeting was basically two sections. The first one is about publishing slash no deploying wrappers. We actually had a discussion about how should we name it, deploy versus publish, and we came to the conclusion that the deployment was the best choice, and that it should be included as a section because it's really not an optional part of the process because it has to be deployed somewhere for the client to retrieve it, even if it's just a file system. And then we expanded upon the section about how to use how to use wrappers, and there we explained like what the wrappers do, and we structured it in a way where we say, okay, so what can we actually do with wrappers? We explained invocation, sub invocation, and
Yeah, so I think actually this was a point where so can you please scroll up a little bit? So to this top of the section here, how does rep work? Okay, cool. So yeah, so I actually made some edits to this section after you guys did, Nestor.
oh, okay.
And basically what I did was in each section, I wanted it just to be a cursory overview of what this means, and then it would link to other standards. So almost like a glossary. Would you mind putting the how does wrap work at the top of the page, please? So we can see the stuff at the bottom. Yeah, right there. Thank you. So for example, if you look in the deploying wrappers section, instead of going into more detail, we just basically say that the built artifacts can use the build pipeline and be deployed anywhere, and then we just link to like the URI and URI resolution standards. So like any of the other relevant standards. So like trying to keep this as short as possible, so it is just like an introductory like glossary of the core parts of what wrap is. Do you think that that's like a good path to go for these sections, or do you think that we should have more detail?
No, I think it's fine. Like actually, when like at the point where you took over, like Neeraj and I had discussed um about that specifically. Like if we were putting maybe too much detail into the sections, maybe. So no, I think it's fine.
Okay, cool. And yeah, just to go over like the main points of how does wrap work. It's building wrappers, and then deploying wrappers, integrating and exposing application capabilities. And if you scroll down just a little bit farther to the last section, which is extending standard interfaces. So I think that in all these sections we pretty much cover like all of the main like sections of what Polywrap is. Um, and yeah, that was just like the main goal here is to just do a broad stroke and cover all the different sections of what Polywrap is.
I know this isn't a Finnish standard. I mean, it is a Finnish standard, but other standards are not. So client doesn't appear here, should it?
Yeah, that's a really great point. So inside of the integration or inside of the integrating wrappers section, we do say integrating wrappers into applications can be done using any wrap client. Invocations are made to wrappers by providing the URI, module, and method to be executed. And then related standards, invocation, and then also I think we have some client standards that can go here too. So yeah, I think that the related standards section of that like can be added to in the future with other things that are relevant there. So basically treating this wrap standard document as almost like our glossary, as like our introductory page. And then all other standards will be like, sub from here.
I have a minor observation. I don't have any strong opinions, but I think that we should maybe call the integrating wrapper section to something else, like maybe invoking or calling or using, because um, when you read the text, you say like, oh, okay, so this is actually like calling the methods of the wrappers through a client, and so if I want to read more, read invocation. But then integration, um, I I mean, if I just read the titles, I may think that there is like the core functionality, which is invocation, may be like missing from this glossary. I don't know. Does anybody else feel like that?
Yeah, I think using wrappers or something similar would be better choice of naming.
Okay. Yeah, let me change that really quick.
I'm not sure on the terminology. I personally like invoking or executing or something similar.
I really like invoking, to be honest, personally. I think that a wrapper invoking and like a client that invoke looks cool and explicit, to be honest. But yeah, I have a question.
Yeah, since you kind of call it already invoke to invoke a method. Yeah.
Huh. All right, I will ask my question since no one has much feedback there. In integrating wrappers, we're saying invocations are made to wrappers by providing the URI, module, and method to be executed. Right? This module would be
Mutation
query
or
and
query?
or mutation, right? Like,
Hmm.
should that be removed?
I think that that's a good point, Jordan, because we're already removing that. So
Yep. Yeah, that is a good point. Yeah, I'll add that to the feedback, I guess. Yeah, let me.
So in the
Also,
deploying So in the deploying wrappers section, we say that build artifacts generated by the build pipeline need to be deployed to a network core file system. I mean, you could embed the wrappers with the application. That's something we'll support very soon.
And if you embed, you wouldn't deploy, correct? If I understand things correctly.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't
Well,
deploy it to a network core file system, but you would deploy it with your application.
no, yeah, I think that embedding is a step after. Like so, that was kind of why I liked naming the section integrating wrappers. Um, because we could add a section about embedding there maybe. But for deployment, like, you still need to stick your WASM files on a file system before you then run the next step of like copying those WASM bytes into, let's say, like a source file in TypeScript or something like that. So yeah, I think that embedding is after the deploying step.
Yeah, and yeah, here, if we are like removing the concept of module, are the functions that are exposed by the wrapper, should we call them function or method?
So we do have modules, but it's just a single one. Um, like it's like a module.experts.
Yeah,
I picture it like that. Yeah.
yeah, and when it comes to function versus method, the reason for calling it method is because it's like it's a function that is available on an object, and that object just so happens to be like a WASM file. Um, and another nice part about this is that function is a very common keyword in languages, so there's a lot of naming conflicts that come up there. But if we call it method, like we can use that without conflicting with language keywords. But that's like a very sub point. But yeah, I just thought that method was a little more appropriate.
I actually think that the second point is stronger, and I agree with you. Just because function is like a very broad, uh, possibly conflicting concept. But if you say the module methods or the wrapper methods, like that those are specifically like the functions that the wrapper is exposing. At least that's how I see it.
Yeah, I also agree with the second point more.
Same.
Okay, cool. And while we're talking about naming, like I know that this isn't here, but should we call for the invocation options? Should we call it input or args or arguments or something like that? Currently, it's called input.
I like arguments.
I've had this conflict before. When I'm like in um, autopilot mode, I write args and then I realize that I made a mistake and it should be input instead. I prefer args. I think it's more natural.
That
The, the,
sounds also
the,
good to me.
the other term you guys want to consider is parameters. That's also used for arguments or inputs.
Yeah, I didn't want to suggest that because parameters is a bit of a bit more scarcely used than arguments, I feel.
I like arguments as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
So rename to args. Awesome.
if we are
Jordan,
renaming,
where are you collecting the feedback? Because we're obviously not in the
Yeah, sorry.
not in the
Yeah,
note anymore. It broke my process
I'm
a little.
okay. Yeah, sorry. I was adding it to the bottom of the GitHub document.
That's fine. That's fine. No problem at all. I will take it out later. Um, okay, let's continue. We do have a workshop session scheduled right after this, and I was going to ask what we want to focus on, but considering the fact that this is quickly turning into and I mean, this is basically we're still reviewing the standards. I think we can just continue, right, until we get this finalized.
Unless anyone has anything anywhere else to be, I think that's fine.
yeah,
Let's
sounds good.
go.
Okay, cool. So let me just quickly incorporate that last bit of feedback about removing the concept of module, and also like query and mutation. And then maybe we'll be in a good place to have everyone review this for one final time, and maybe even get this accepted. I'm not sure.
Yeah, that would be
But
great.
yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, let me just incorporate that really quick. Give me 2 minutes.
Yeah, and about the args versus input, right? In wrappers, we use the term input for like getting the input. So yeah, what are your thought on that? Like, should we also rename that, or yeah, we should keep it as it is?
That's a good point, and I think we should rename it to argument, yeah, to RX, just to keep. I think I don't know the word in English. I think it's congruent. Does that exist? But yeah, like to
Uh,
that
Consistent is what you're looking
consistent.
for.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I even think that the input keyword came from GraphQL semantics because the GraphQL specification calls arguments input. Um, yeah.
And yeah, so what do you guys think about like putting this all the args type that we generate under one single namespace, like args namespace, and then we have just the name of it, so that people can just use args dot, yeah, whatever the name of function it is.
Yeah, we have a GitHub issue for basically improving the code gen for like assembly script and TypeScript. Yeah, I think that that's definitely an approach we could take. Yeah, would you want to maybe add a comment to that issue, talking about like what it would look like?
Okay, yeah, can you link me the issue?
Yeah, I'll find it really quick. Um, Also, I just finished making the updates to this wrap standard, so if we wanted to, maybe collectively, yeah, if you just refresh the page, um, if we want to just maybe collectively take a minute to read through it and see if we all think it's good, maybe.
Oh, one point. So a while back, Jordan, you and I talked about calling maybe plugins plugin wrappers and wrappers wasm wrappers, like having it be more. So plugins are technically wrappers. They have a schema, they have a manifest. You call them like you would call a wrapper. And I think I did so even in the tests for the client. There's a plugin wrapper test suite and a wasm wrapper test suite. So can we maybe what's the word, settle on a naming scheme? What do
Yeah,
you guys think?
what are the conflicting names again?
So should we continue just saying, you can deploy wrappers, you can use wrappers when referring to wasm wrappers, and saying plugins are this, plugins are that when referring to
Okay.
plugins, or should it be wasm wrappers and plugin wrappers?
Yeah, so I personally feel pretty strong about saying plugin wrappers and WASM wrappers. And that's because like developers should be able to invoke wrappers without worrying about whether they are a plugin or a WASM or an interface even. And then also, being able to integrate wrappers without worrying about what they are behind the covers. And so basically, a wrapper just refers to something with like a schema, and behind it, it could be WebAssembly or it could be anything else.
Yeah, manifest and schema.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not sure about that, and the main reason is that this is from experience, right? That basically you can get confused between what a wrapper is and what a plugin is because assembly script uses syntax from TypeScript, right? So when you're developing a plugin, you can get confused with a wrapper, right? I think that indeed what you're saying makes sense, that they use a scheme, and at the end of the day, a wrapper shouldn't be aware of what's behind of that. But I wouldn't say that we should call them plugin rubber and wasm rubber. To be honest, yeah, I don't have a solution for now, but I think yeah, I have a strong opinion, and yeah, I think that's it. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that one of the things that can help solve this is that like making the manifest files for your wrapper projects more explicit. And so currently, you know, in a plugin project, it has a manifest file that has plugin in the name. So it says web3 API dot plugin. And then inside of that manifest file, you have to tell the toolchain what language you're using. So it's, you know, plugin slash TypeScript. And so you know, similarly with WebAssembly, you know, we could have WASM maybe be in the manifest file name to make it more explicit that this is like a WebAssembly wrapper. But yeah, I feel like you should be able to, you know, just by looking at the files of a wrapper, be able to tell, you know, what type of wrapper it is.
Yeah, that makes sense because basically a wrapper is an interface, right? Which has an implementation under the hood that you shouldn't be aware, right? You should call the interface.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yep.
so, um, so I agree with the plugin wrappers and WASM wrappers thing, uh, just because I think that plugins or assembly script or Rust wrappers or interfaces, they all from within Polywrap, they look like wrappers and behave like wrappers, like for developers. And so they are wrappers regardless of their underlying implementation, and they can be used without knowing the underlying implementation.
Yeah, I'm definitely all for plugin wrappers, and don't forget interface wrappers. So WASM plugin and interface wrappers. And just anecdotally, the other day I was onboarding the other Yuri from Neurofield onto Polywrap and explaining all of the concepts. And when I went to the client tests and saw the plugin wrapper suite, I started mentioning that we are thinking about calling it plugin wrappers, WASM wrappers, and it totally clicked in his mind a lot more when thinking about these things as wrappers, that everything's a wrapper, especially since, like Nestor said, when calling it in the application or in WebAssembly, you're invoking a wrapper, regardless whether it's an interface, plugin, or a WASM module.
And actually, like from a conceptual standpoint, like plugins, like we call it plugins, but they are really host functions wrappers. Like they literally wrap host functions so that they're accessible to other wrappers, just like any other um, wrapper subclass, let's say.
Yeah, so that maybe brings up another point, which is should we still call things plugins? You know, maybe calling them host wrappers or something like that.
Application wrappers.
I was thinking that I think it's more correct, uh, but it doesn't have such a nice ring, I think.
Yeah, that's true. And but I also think it is important to kind of like enforce this concept of like host and guest, you know, similar in like operating systems where you have like root privileges and application privileges or like guest privileges. And so yeah, maybe by like because I've actually found that when I describe plugins to people, they don't often understand why it's important. And then when I say, you know, you can expose, you know, host capabilities like the file system or networking, it becomes more apparent to them of like, oh, okay, that's the purpose of them.
I think that if we call them like host wrappers, and what they do is hosting, sorry, wrapping host capabilities, like it would be like automatically understood. Maybe.
So I personally think host wrappers sounds like it's hosting wrappers in a sense. But regardless, I think I don't think we're being consistent here. We're talking about host capabilities, but in the standard, we're calling it application capabilities, which I do think it's more correct because it doesn't have to be like I'm kind of 50-50, but yeah, I think application capabilities sounds more all-encompassing, especially when talking about integrating wrappers or calling them from your application, and then you have application capabilities. I think it makes sense to maybe call them application wrappers. They're written in the language of the application. You know, it kind of all fits, but that's just me.
Yeah, that is a good point. Application wrappers or app wrappers. Um, yeah, okay. But then we do have a naming conflict there then because we have code generation for applications. So it's like um, to to be able to like, use wrappers. And so yeah, I'm just not sure what we would call that. Yeah.
Even if we do end up calling it host wrappers because of host capabilities, I would rename the standard to exposing host capabilities then, just to be consistent. But yeah, it's a good point about CodeGen. I'm not sure what to do either.
Okay. All right. So mhm.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say that we don't have to come with a solution on the spot. Like we could take a couple of days to think about it.
Yeah, I agree. It seems like we reached some really good consensus on calling everything a wrapper, WASM wrappers, plugin wrappers, and then we can all now kind of take a minute to think about whether plugin is the right word or we should call it something else. Okay.
I definitely think application capabilities makes more sense to me than host capabilities, or at least it's more descriptive, I think.
I like what you're saying, Yuri, because I remember when we first defined it to be named plugin. If I understand things correctly, the main reason was to basically, add something in the application language of the wrapper. So yeah, my main point is that that's a capability, right? So that's something you add. So application capabilities really sounds like a good name. I will think more about this, but what you're think I mean I think what you're thinking makes sense.
And to the point of CodeGen, so yeah, we have interface as like a namespace, and then if interface build, interface deploy, whatever. So interface wrappers, then we have plugins, at least currently plugin wrappers, I guess, or WASM. So WASM wrappers. Actually, we call it wrapper. I'm not sure what we call it in the CLI. So is it W3
uh,
wrapper build?
Oh yeah, it's it with the new CLI naming, it's going to be Polywrap wrap. So yeah, it should probably be renamed to Polywrap WASM build. Yeah.
So if we have interface, we have WASM, and if you're talking about applications and application capabilities, I almost feel like it should be application wrappers, and there is a conflict with apps then. But also on the point of apps, it's not like we're providing a way to build apps or entire apps. We're just extending the capabilities, I guess, of an app. So maybe it's not that the application wrappers conflict with our cogen. It's more like our cogen conflicts with our application wrapper naming. Maybe that should change.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good point.
yeah, I agree. And maybe like we can rename it to SDK, like SDK code gen or something like that. Because
I
what we
like
are generating is basically SDK.
Yeah, I think that might be good. That brings me to the one thing I also have trouble with describing wrappers to people. So, I guess what's the difference between SDK and a library? I usually, or in the past, I used the term library a lot more. But so SDK is like a software development kit. I guess that could include multiple things. I'm not sure. They're kind of interchangeable.
Yeah,
I Yeah, I think like SDK are generally like collections of libraries. So if we are talking about like, for example, AWS SDK, then it is like collection of many AWS libraries. Like some are for S3, some are for something else. Yeah, so that's my general opinion about it.
But it's also a single library, just like those. If it's a collection of libraries, those libraries could be SDKs technically. Well, although I guess the purpose of it is like to to it's a library for a platform, so there's many sub libraries. I get that. I think I get it. So I guess technically then wrappers are more like next gen libraries. I mean, they could be next gen SDKs. It's literally the same thing. If they consume, so for example, maybe the Uniswap wrapper is a next gen SDK, but SHA-3 wrapper is a next gen library, technically speaking.
It's all just code. Yeah, I really don't know what to best choose, SDK or library. I think that the reason why we talk about SDK so much is because it kind of sounds better to people. Like it's kind of a better marketing term, rather than saying libraries. It's like, okay, that sounds very mundane and boring. But yeah, if you tell a non-technical person, hey, like we help you build your SDKs, they're like, oh, cool. I've heard my organization talk about needing to build that, or having built that. Yeah,
And,
yeah.
and protocols have marketed their own tooling as SDKs.
That's
Even if they're just libraries, the protocols themselves call them SDKs. So if people are familiar with this kind of tooling, it will feel more natural to hear SDK, even if technically it is not. So that's what I think.
I mean, what I'm saying is it technically is both an SDK and a library. So protocols are, this is what Niraj said. So it's a collection of libraries, and to extend it, it's for like a purpose. So a protocol library or protocol SDK actually is an SDK because it's a collection of other helpful libraries just to target that protocol, that platform, I guess. So protocol libraries are actually protocol SDKs, but they also depend on protocol on just libraries. So yeah, wrappers could be technically either SDKs or libraries, depends on the purpose, I guess, and the structure. They're both. But yeah, in terms of terminology, I don't think it matters. SDKs is maybe a bit more used against the general populace.
So I was wondering if we could maybe refocus on this wrap standard, because if we could all just kind of take a quick read through, we could maybe even get this approved today as well. What do you guys think about doing that?
For sure.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so maybe, yeah, what do you guys think is best? Should everyone just take a quick minute or two to read through it on their own?
I think so.
Okay.
I think that's probably, let's take 10 minutes to read through the standard, especially since, let me just refresh it real quick just to make sure if you guys want to read off the street of the screen, but it's not going to fit on the screen, so I'd say just go ahead and open this up. Let me just post a link really quick.
Yeah, I just posted a link in technical console chat.
What I'm gonna do while you guys are doing this is I'm gonna set up really quick the another post here so we can have the voting mechanism set up real quick. So we'll just do that.
Wait, voting mechanism for the standard?
Yeah, so we can vote. So we can go through the acceptance today if we feel we're ready. Okay.
Yeah, because
Oh, okay.
yeah, right now, if you look in the technical console chat, I posted a link to the wrap standard document. If you could take a few minutes to read it, and then we're gonna vote on it.
Yeah, I thought it was in the final feedback phase. That's what I was confused. It usually then goes to the acceptance next week or next 2 weeks.
Yeah, right. We're just trying to do it basically faster. So reading
Yeah.
through it, see if you have any final feedback, and if there is no final feedback, then we can vote.
Yep. How we doing on time? Do we need more time?
I could use a couple of minutes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Let's
you
take
know,
another. Let's take another 5 minutes. Absolutely. And if we need more, I'll ask again. No problem. This is. But it take extra time, right?
Yeah.
Then going back and fixing it later. Sorry, I'm gonna stop talking. Let you go. Let you focus.
I have a couple of feedbacks. So whenever we are done, I can go on to it.
Yeah, I need a couple more minutes.
Yeah, just be sure to write them down so we don't forget.
I think I'm done.
All right, quick time check. Just for another 5 minutes. Are we ready to review the feedback? Or do we need a little bit more time?
So who needs time?
I'm good.
Okay, let's. Anybody would like to go with discuss? With feedback. Let me just refresh if we added it here.
Sure.
Go ahead, Yuri.
So let me just find my notes. So first thing, just that I think it's a typo. So you can think of wrap interfaces as an interoperability abstraction standard on top of WebAssembly. On top isn't one word, right? It's two words. Just above another standard.
So it just needs to be on space top.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's 2 words. You're right.
Fixed.
Did you just Google, Jordan?
Yes, I did, and I had to. Yes.
I knew it was you. Second, I'm not sure about this, but just to put it out there, so down below, where we say define building wrappers, so how does wrap work? Building wrappers, define an interface. All wrap modules have semantic interfaces, and then wrap interfaces are bound. Yes, they are interfaces or APIs, as some would call them, or schema technically. So interfaces might be the most applicable word here, but I think they could be confused with actual wrap interfaces or interface wrappers. I almost feel like, especially since, yes, they're interfaces, they're an API, like your application interface, but you do not define a module with like interface and the name of the module. You define it with type and then name of the module, or like in the future, if you have a custom SDL, it will be module and then name of the module. So I almost feel like it could be confused with actual interface wrappers or wrap interfaces.
Yeah, I came to that conclusion the other day. When I wrote this, I was in the camp of we should stop using the word schema. We should make everything just called interface. But I realized the same thing that you just said, that it gets very confusing. And I do think that schema is probably the best way. So yeah. So here I just updated it. If you refresh the page, Eugene, it'll show. Does that look better, Yuri?
Generate bindings also has the word interfaces, and maybe somewhere else. But I think that's more correct. But I also don't get me wrong. I like the word interfaces for this. I think it's a bit more descriptive. So I'm not like 100% behind what I'm even proposing. So what the rest of the guys think?
I think that my 2 cents are that probably, I mean, interfaces is defined previously in the document, right? So yeah, we should probably, I don't know, we should profile like explicitly say that interface in this document will be like yeah, like with this definition in mind. I don't know if that makes sense. And we keep interface because yeah, I really like interface too instead of skim, but yeah, I don't know what you guys think.
And what do you think? Could it be confused with wrapper interfaces?
Yeah, so I don't know. I think that we could just say everything is an interface, and then you can have standard interfaces as well. Yeah.
I don't want to like get too deep into the naming conundrum again, but I prefer schema just because I think we have several different types of interfaces at different levels, and we know that because we are, core contributors, but I don't think that that's so easily digestible for outside developers. Like
I do think
it
this is a
makes us
good.
a lot of confusion. Sorry.
I do think this is a good place or and time to start getting more consistent on naming. So I don't think we could get too deep.
I I also think I also like the interface, but if I am like an outside developer, right, and I don't know anything about this, then yeah, having two different placements and interface in two different contexts would make everything very confusing.
I'm going to be honest. Since you guys think that I don't, but since you guys think that I think we should change that to schema, then I think that's a correct. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Okay, I'm about to push a change right now. One sec.
Finger on the trigger. So could we say the part where we have composability, interfaces, complex database passing, actually that is that schema or is that wrap interfaces? uh, that's
Here,
schema, I think.
yeah, if you refresh the page, the only place that uses interface now is standard interfaces. Um,
So what about at the top? More at the top, composability, schemas. So there is no standard for defining type schemas for Revasa modules. I do like, so I'm kind of more what's the word, leaning on the use of schemas or schema, but I also think it could be a bit confusing defining what a schema is for every developer. So maybe extending this to be something like there is no standard for defining an API for your WASM modules. So schema is an API, right? It's your application.
yeah, but like I feel like API
I'm,
is even more confusing. Like why
oh,
wouldn't you just say interface? Because like interface is in the word API.
kinda, yeah, but at least in my experience, whenever I worked, so most of my experience was in C Sharp, and it was always an API for a library. What's the API of this library?
Okay,
It was almost never an interface, but that might be,
okay.
just in that bubble of developers.
Um, yeah, I think that if we're going for like the most understandable, we're using the word schema, we're using the word interface elsewhere. Yeah, like having API here. Um, yeah, like what's the API for your WASM module? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. Like yeah. Hmm.
I mean, I'm fine with schemas. I was just
Yeah,
thinking
that
maybe.
to me like it seems like out of place there, like APIs. Uh, yeah, I'm sure.
Okay. So yeah, let's just leave it as schema. And are we in agreement that we should still be calling it standard interfaces, or should they be standard schemas, or yeah.
Oh god.
So, standard interfaces are wrapper interfaces, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
with no implementation, it's just the schema. Yeah, and then you can register multiple implementations.
that one I would call interfaces.
Okay, cool.
So should they be standard interfaces or wrapper interfaces or interface wrappers?
Wrapper interface. I think it makes sense.
Wrapper interfaces.
Um,
Or
okay.
Oh
interface
no.
wrappers since it's plugin wrappers and WASM wrappers, so is it interface wrappers?
Yeah. So in the context of this document, I think that we should say, extending standard interfaces. I think that this makes the most sense here. When we talk about what these are, we can say they are interface wrappers. It's a wrapper that is just an interface. Yeah, I think that that's what we should do. I don't think that we should put interface wrapper here because that might get a little confusing.
Right.
I
That will
agree.
go into when you define the standard interfaces. That will define it here in more details. Right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, right. Yep.
And should that standard be standard interfaces or interface wrap?
Yeah, let's here, I'll so just how in the plugin section we call it plugins, here we're calling them standard interfaces. So like, you know,
Yeah, old
shorthand
naming.
is yeah. So the shorthand is it's a standard interface. Like the full name is like standard interface wrapper, um, or you could just call it like an interface wrapper. Yeah.
Yeah, and one more thing, so in section of like why another standard, we are like saying schemas, but so I feel like when you're talking generically, interface word looks good there, but when we talk about our own rep protocol, the schemas word suits best because we are calling it schema. I'm not sure about it. That's
Where's
what
that place? Can you scroll up?
yeah,
What was the
about
place?
why another standard. Yeah, about that. Here. Yeah, here after composability we have schemas. So it feels like when we are talking generically, the interface sounds good, but when we talk about scheme, our own protocol, then schema sounds good.
I do agree with that, but then this would change what we reference down below, where, with that reference bindings, composability, and the schema.
Yeah,
So
maybe like in the
yeah,
description of interfaces, we can just say like definitely type schema interfaces.
yeah, maybe schema interfaces instead of schemas. Oh god.
All right. I think I have one quick thing that can maybe end this for all. so so when like having these name discussions, oftentimes words mean different things to all of us, right? Like they invoke meaning to us. We think of them in different ways, and that's not very empirical, right? It's kind of like if you ask anybody, you're going to get different answers. And so I think that with naming things, the most empirical way to do it is to look at the definition. And so it's like, for example, if you look up the definition for schema, um, what I found is a plan, outline, or model, a pattern imposed on complex reality, a diagram, a graphical representation. Um, yep, so a representation of a plan. But if you look for the definition of an interface, what you see is um, a point at which independent systems interact, a surface forming a common boundary between adjacent regions. Um, so basically, an interface is in between two different sections, whereas a schema is kind of explaining a plan.
Yeah, interface implies communication. So there's got to be two actors there. With schema is basically one actor announcing its structure.
Right. And so I have my own thoughts on what to do with this information, but I'm curious if anybody else has thoughts.
Go ahead and share your thoughts, please.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I propose that we call the schemas interfaces, um, and the reason is because they help you communicate to the WebAssembly. So it's that boundary in between your application and the wrapper. So these are our wrapper interfaces. And then we have to come up with a better name for standard interfaces, like when you're creating a standard. Maybe we call those, like just standard or something like that. Um, but yeah, I think that interface is probably the best word.
So we would be having interface.graphql files that describe the methods and the types and stuff.
Or interface.wrap files, where we
Right,
can,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
But what
Yeah,
will the name be for interface wrappers then? I don't think we can define this without defining the other.
Yeah, so for
And
standard interface wrappers, we could maybe call those standard, like standards.
I'm not sure about that because yeah, many times like in programming language when we want to describe this kind of term, we call it interface, like one interface, and like you have multiple implementations of it. So I think programmers would know this term better. Like they when they see like interface, they know like yeah, this is interface, and there will be multiple implementations of it.
Well, yeah. So,
Yeah.
and we could just call it, an interface wrapper, and it's just an interface. Yeah, you know, uh,
What about maybe getting into more specific? Like interface is obviously like an abstract term defining the interactivity, but then you have APIs for application program interfaces specifically, explicitly talk about communication with a piece of with a running application runtime. What about maybe
Oh
things like
yes.
um, um, uh, maybe since with an interface with a WebAssembly, maybe it's a language interface. We could come up with some new terms that make it more explicit of the type. What are you interfacing with?
Back to APIs.
no, no. I think that it's explicitly this is an interface for a wrapper. What type of wrapper that may be, it could be implemented as a plugin. It could be implemented as WebAssembly. Um, so so when you say a plugin wrapper or you say a WASM wrapper, you are implying that they both have obviously implementations, but also an interface. When you say an interface wrapper, you don't know what the implementation is. So it's kind of like a tree. Like at the root node is an interface wrapper, and then you have children, which are plugin wrappers or WASM wrappers.
Honestly, if we're talking about what's uh, what's in the definition, I do feel like for the schemas or for the interfaces, I feel like API is the correct terminology. APIs have types, modules, functions, interfaces. Interfaces don't have interfaces. Like I think APIs wasn't just something that my circle of developers was used, but it's also just a standard way of defining the functions and the types of a library called an API,
Yeah,
application programming.
but the I stands for interface. So it's like you're really just saying interface, but it's a specialized
No,
form of it.
I don't think that that's synonymous, honestly.
I
Kind
think
of.
it is like it is a special breed of interface. Just like you have an ABI for a binary interface. Um, yeah, that's technically what we're creating here is we're creating like an interface for a binary.
True, but you wouldn't say I went to the movies with a couple of different animals. You would say you went with a couple of friends or humans. I feel like it's more specific, more concrete. An API is a type of an interface.
Yeah, and it's like I don't like these interfaces could be used to program in your wrappers. They could also be used to program in your apps. So it's like I don't know if application programming is like I don't know. Yeah.
Well, why not then wrapper interface, right? Because wrapper is an application.
See,
then you would have wrapper interfaces and interface wrappers, right? And they are like two completely different things at different levels.
Yeah, it's even more confusing. Okay.
Well, no, I think that it is the same thing, like it's similar to how we call everything a wrapper, right? When you say you have a plugin wrapper, you are inferring that you already have an interface, like that's a part of it, right? Like, um, that's why I was saying it's a tree. Like the root node is we have interfaces, and then the children are okay. You could have a plugin or you could have a WASM, but both of which still have an interface.
So maybe
The,
give
the
it a more explicit name, Polywrap, maybe Polywrap interface, just maybe brand it. No?
I mean, technically, in the definition of an API, it says that an application programming interface connects computers or pieces of software to each other, just like a user interface connects a computer to a person. So it's not just for applications. I know the term application, and it might be confused with our applications where the client lives. That's another point. But just in terms of what an API is, I do feel like that's the, an API is for a library, for example, not just for your application. So it's how a library could communicate with another library. Not saying we should go for that, but
So I think that we have agreed upon not calling it schema, as it doesn't adequately represent what it is. But maybe we could continue like the naming discussion of this specific part later and just call it interface here as of right now.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we can also still just call it a standard interface, and we can figure out how to better differentiate standard interfaces from like regular interfaces if we need to.
sure.
Yeah, why don't we like keep interface everywhere here instead of schema? But when we talk about extending standard interface, we call it extending interface wrappers. So yeah, wrapper
Yep.
interface.
Yeah, I think that sounds good. I'll make those changes right now.
Okay.
While you're making the change, I have to share this quote. This conversation reminded me of a quote from a very, from a college professor in computer science that I took many, many years ago. And he used to say the following. He said, there's only two things that are complex in computer science. That's technical entropy and naming stuff. I thought you would appreciate that.
Yeah,
100%.
yeah. Actually, Uncle Bob has a topic regarding naming. It's
There
cool,
you
cool.
go. I watch Alcon
Just
Bob. I know who that is.
I thought that joke also went that there's two hard things in computer science, and then the third one is off by one errors.
I know that one.
True.
Just anecdotally, in a previous company, we spent a whole day talking about or deciding whether we were going to use 2 spaces for tabs or 4 when writing in Angular. Kind of like naming, but standard.
Amazing.
We ended up choosing 4.
All right, a quick time check. We're 10 minutes towards the top of the hour. So my question is, what other topics? So I'm gonna refresh the screen. Jordan, you're still making changes, right?
No, I already pushed them. It's all
Right.
good.
So let me just refresh this real quick. So let me see. Was there any other feedback that we haven't discussed yet after you read through?
I do have a couple. So,
Yeah,
like, invocations are made to wrappers by providing the wrapper module's URI. Is it the wrapper module's URI or the wrapper's URI? Is there a module in the URI? There isn't, right?
yeah.
Or
So, the wrapper modules URI. That's a good point. I think it should just be the wrappers URI.
Yeah, I think so.
It's just the wrapper's URI, definitely. Like at least for now. If we change it in the future, we can make a revision.
invoking wrappers. That's below.
Okay. Yep. I just
Eugene.
changed it.
Okay.
Okay.
Exposing application capabilities. Oh no, that was the so that part. What host capabilities two wrappers have access to? So that was a typo. Either wrappers without the two or the wrapper. Oh, I think someone changed it already. Yeah.
Yeah. I changed that.
And the last, or second last, was wrappers can be registered as implementations ahead of time or discovered on demand at runtime. Is there a way to do that? Or I know we talked about having like a registry of implementations and stuff like that, but that's far off.
Yeah, so it's,
Uh,
the intention here was just to describe the possibilities of what can be possible here. And of course, like we would need to build solutions for this, or even just developers could build this themselves. But it's totally possible to do either or.
But I mean, yeah, I do agree with that. I just wanted to mention, like, currently you have to register them. There's no technical way in the client. Like, the client would have to be extended. There's no way of actually extending the client. You would need to rewrite it or, change it.
Yeah, so we do support like invocation time reconfigurations. So you could technically reconfigure the interface implementations when you do an invocation.
True.
Yeah, but this is again just like one of the things that the client needs to become more mature to better support. But it's definitely like a core principle of like what we're trying to build.
Makes sense. And last time, I don't want to be nitpicky, but it's kind of bugging me the deploying wrappers. So I almost feel like you don't have to deploy a wrapper to embed it. Like, I don't know, it feels weird that it says that it needs to be deployed to a network or file system. I think that's an option. You don't have to deploy it in that way. You could just embed it and deploy it with your app. And
Yeah, so to me, when we say the step above compiling WebAssembly, that just means that we build the WebAssembly modules. But actually deploying the wrapper means to actually create an archive of artifacts, like an archive of build artifacts. That includes WebAssembly. It includes the schema or the type info, and also like the manifest file. So that to me is the deployment step. And when you basically create that archive and put it somewhere, um, yeah, like both of those steps are within the deployment step to me.
so generating the build artifacts is a deployment step.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. Yeah.
Oh,
Or maybe we could put that in the build wrappers section of compile wasm, and then maybe a step number 4 is create like archive or um, yeah, like and we could then link to the standard for what the wrapper archive looks like, because we don't even have that linked here, of what the actual build folder should look like.
it could be compile wasm and then build wrapper.
Yeah, okay, compile wasm build wrapper. All right, I will add that. One sec.
Because the
Uh,
reason with deploying wrappers, it was confusing, not only because of that, but also because it says then integrators can access them by the URI. So that part is misaligned. Because if you're embedding, you're not you need to again move them. You're not just accessing the build artifacts directly with the URI.
Well, even in the case where you're embedding, you're still providing a URI. It's similar to like registering a plugin.
No. That's correct, but you're not accessing the build artifacts that were generated by the build step. In the build folder, you're actually moving it to the application, embedding them, and then accessing them.
Okay.
So technically, you're not. The step says. Sorry, but the step says build artifacts generated by the build pipeline need to be deployed to the network or file system so that these ones can access them by its URI. But you're not deploying it to a file system and accessing it via URI. You're deploying it to an app, embedding it, and then kind of.
Okay.
You're not using a file system URI, basically.
Okay, so would you prefer we rename this section to deploying or embedding wrappers or something like that?
Yeah, at least some mention of embedding wrappers, that's an option. I think would
Okay.
be great.
All right. Sounds good. I'm gonna try and make these changes in the next like 2 minutes, and then maybe it'll look good. Hang on one sec.
And then we can still make it with the vote. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
We
Yeah.
get to get two standards accepted today.
Are we renaming deploying to embedding?
no, I have the same question. Your question is just to make sure, embed and deploy are two different things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So are we like renaming deploying to embeddings? I didn't get that.
I think Jordan said that he's gonna extend deploying with embedding, something like that.
Okay.
Yeah, the deployment section will talk about embedding. Which actually, to make this move faster, Yuri, would you want to make a quick edit to that deploying wrapper section to do the talk about embedding?
Sure, I could try.
And so do we have a deployment standard? Because I think we may need it.
Okay, let me check. No, I don't see anything for deployment. That should be on the pipeline. We have build process. Should we add a deployment process?
Yeah, I would say so. Would you guys agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think Nestor is the best person to ask for this.
And yeah, on same topic, like we are calling like deployment and publishing steps separately. Like when we deploy on IPFS, we call it deploy, and when we register it on ENS, we call it publishing. So yeah, how will that reflect in standard?
My two
S-
cents. Go ahead, go ahead.
Sorry.
Well, we can discuss the naming convention. I'm just gonna add right now deployment to this list. So we have it. Convert to issue.
Yeah, maybe not add that to the wrap standard, but add it as a separate standard and not need to mention it maybe here. I'm not sure. Or just as reference standard, something like that.
Okay, I just updated the two sections.
Oh, I'm trying to update it too. What's gonna happen?
No, yeah, I actually did that already, so it should be good.
Deploying and embedding,
Yep.
or embedding directly inside the application. So you added this and you had changed the name.
Else? Oh yeah, okay.
And then also I added that step 4 build wrapper.
Yep, here it is. Build wrapper. Oops, sorry.
Okay, I was gonna
Should
use the
should we add the
very similar wording.
Yep.
This looks good to me.
All right.
Hey, are we ready to vote?
Yeah, let's do one more read through quickly and let's do a vote. Here's I just posted the link. Let the voting commence.
I don't want to be annoying, but I have a thought. Just curious here. In the deploying and embedding wrappers, I mean, I'm going to go yes because I think it's okay so far, but yeah, just to keep this in mind. So yeah, I don't stop the process. in the wrapper, yeah, deploying and embedding wrappers, the part that the wrapper builds artifacts generated by the build pipeline can be deployed to a network or file system or embedded directly inside of applications. If I understood things correctly, Judah said that basically the only way that, yeah, I mean, when you have an embedded wrapper, you can only access it through file system. Am I right? So,
No, you access it through the URI. It's in the memory. It's not on the
yeah,
file system.
but the URI is file system, or no, it can be
No, no,
any.
no. It's something like
Okay,
another authority, basically.
okay. But okay, thank you. Then never mind.
Can I share a screen just a second?
Also,
So, oh, go ahead.
yeah, during embedding, like, right? So do we like, yeah, so when I want to like embed the wrapper in my application, do I, yeah, do I download the wrapper from the deployed URI and then I embed it, or yeah,
Yeah, the CLI would fetch it from the URI you provide it, and then it would create source files with the bytecode, just basically right there as like a static variable. Um, and so that yeah, there's no need at runtime to do any reading of files or anything like that. Like all of the WASM bytecode is in memory already.
okay.
Not to be too pedantic, but I like Grammarly, so should we kind of change some of the punctuation, some of the grammatical mistakes, like using runtime or run dash time, stuff like that?
Yeah,
Can
I
affect readability
I
a bit.
yeah, I would welcome you to make a push with some grammar updates for sure. Yeah, that'd be really useful.
Okay, sure, I'll do that.
Okay, to continue with
Yeah,
the
but
vote.
yeah, that's the question.
Yeah, for sure.
Does the vote need to wait for updates, or should we just vote?
No, yeah, I don't think grammar updates matter that much.
Yeah, yeah.
Cool. This is also another noob question. It's embedded wrappers already supported. Like, can we do that now or
Nope, not yet.
Yeah, not
okay?
not currently.
Cool.
And the crowd goes wild. Ah.
Nice.
Congrats, guys.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think that pretty much sums up today's meeting, which was incredibly productive. We did a great workshop on the rep standard, and we finished up with the previous standard as well, with the RS standard. So I'll post all of that to the public channel for review for the DAO, and also I'll update all the details, and we'll be ready for the next set of meetings next week. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks so much, Eugene. Thanks,
Yeah,
everyone.
thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Take care, guys.
Bye.
Yes.
Same.
Same to you.